questions for us. And I'm also going to just bring us off our lovely faces as a bit of a presentation. So one of question that I can see here is from Judith, and she asks, is there a digital number mark to hit before you go to paperback?
No is the answer. Again, traditional, well, I say traditionally, that's just going to confuse things if you call it traditional model. When digital first started, I think the idea was if a book would do well in ebook, it would then be made into a paperback, and you'd have to hit a certain, you'd have to have big sales to then justify the paperback. And that was the case back, I think, probably 8 years ago, when all this was sort of in before, when digital first was starting to pop up. But now it really is just about looking at different routes to market and where the readers are. So for instance, I had an Irish author on my list. Ireland doesn't have the same, it's a very traditional market in general. Ebook isn't as big a thing over there as it is, say, here and in the States. So she had this amazing Irish platform, but her having her ebook out actually didn't mean anything, because like the ebooks and Kindle, it just wasn't as big over there. So actually that's where a paperback physical format was much more beneficial, because that's where the readers were. So it's sort of, as a publisher, it's up to us to find where those readers are going to be and focus on those formats. I don't know if you agree, Ore, even for Borough, you'll have these same conversations. So yeah, no, there isn't a number. It really does depend on the genre, the readership, and also market conditions and what slots are available for, if, you know, for your book. And if, yeah, I mean, obviously selling millions, of course, that's going to help. But there are also a lot of different factors.
Yeah, exactly. I thought this was an interesting question, but just which we can relate sort of more generally. So Jackie asked, can you speak about how quickly Digital First may get the book out, and then the next? But I also wonder, can we talk about the sort of, what's the sort of publishing time frame maybe for a Digital First contract versus traditional contract?
Yeah, well, Ore, do you want to start with the traditional contract, the time frame for publication?
Yeah, so there are two, actually, let's say there are three. The first instance, let's say something, for example, if maybe in 2018, someone was to write a book about the Me Too movement, as it's happening, we might say, we want to push this book out really, really quickly. So what we'll do is a crash title, and someone may send in the manuscript and we will have copies in store possibly 2 months later. That is an absolute nightmare for a publisher to do, but it can happen if you want to make sure you're on the pulse of what's happening and the book is culturally relevant. But in that case, someone would have written the book in its entirety already, so there wouldn't be time for someone to then write a book and then republish it a few months later. The more normal, pause for a minute there.
Did a little countdown.
So if you have written your manuscript already, and usually this is in terms of fiction, your publisher might send it out, let's say they sent it out right now, they sent it around to publishers, someone acquires it within a couple of weeks, and usually what you'd be looking at in that case is a publication around the same time next year, or depending on what type of book you've got, the spring of the following year. So usually if you send a book out now, it would probably be published in 2022 rather than 2021. That enables publishers to do edits with your novel, to get proofs out and get quotes on your novel. And those proofs aren't just for quotes from authors, but also to get proofs to retailers and to indie booksellers to make sure that people can read it and you can get some in-house champions in the bookstores and in the big retailers. And also to build your profile as an author and get you some good publicity slots. So, and it allows also for the marketing team to get their campaign together and things like that. So it just gives you what we would call a long lead time. So crashing in a title is usually something we hate to do, but only in circumstances where something's on the pulse of what's happening in culture and we feel like it's good to have it at that specific time. But usually there's a longer lead time, by about a year and a half. In some more, I wouldn't call them extreme cases, but in some other cases, we might buy a book and actually decide that we want to spend a really long time working on this book. So it might be up to 2 years later that the book is published. Most of the time, that will usually be a non-fiction title, and that will mean that someone sent in a proposal, which is never a finished manuscript, and that then needs to be written, and the author needs time to either do research and write that, or just generally needs time to write it. And so it will usually be 2 years after the book is actually acquired that it's published, or it will be a title that we really want to spend a long time building up. We want to make sure that we've got all the right slots and give ourselves time to work on it. And so sometimes it'll be up to 2 years in which before that book is published. But it really depends. And in terms of speaking actually about 2-book deal, because I've noticed that's in the question as well, with the traditional route, usually what will happen is, even if you do get a long lead time on the first book, so if you were, for example, given two years before your first book published, usually the publisher, it depends though, it can vary, but I'd say 8 times out of 10, the publisher will then expect you to deliver the next book, and they'll want to publish your next books year on year. But obviously, if you've got a 2-book deal, your contract will then have to be renewed once your contract sort of runs out after the 2 books. But that's usually how it works. They'll usually have a shorter time in between the books. Once you've published the first one, if they've established you as an author, they won't need all that time to do that again because they've already established you. So that's how it works in the traditional sense.
And I think there's definitely some crossover on the digital side too. If you strip everything back, you can publish a book in 2 weeks if it's just an ebook, because of the you're not printing a book, the text. But as Ori said as well, that also would be an edited book, and it really does. I think the editing process is so important. And what we as editors do, we're here basically as a fresh eye to give you a different perspective on your book when you've written it and you've created this world and you're so familiar with it. We're here to be the first reader for you and make it the very best it can be and be objective. And I think that editing process is just hugely important. So that can take it really does depend on the author and how much work there is, but that could go on, that could be 3 months easily. And then if you think about, if we're looking at copy edits and proofreads, so those are the stages that come after the structural work, that are kind of giving the manuscript the final polish. So typos and grammar and inconsistencies, there are these amazing eagle-eyed copy editors and proofreaders that can catch all those. And really, for a good proofread and a good copy edit, you need at least 2 weeks. And so there's a month there that goes on that stage at least. So while you can do it very quickly in digital, you also want to make sure the quality is there in the book. You're giving the best to your author. In the same way Ori talked about, you also want to get noise, like people reading it ahead of it being published. And there are some books that we will, from submission to publication, it could be a year or it could be 6 months. The other thing that you bear in mind with digital though is also it does tend to be shorter lead-in times, kind of looking at how the Amazon website itself works. And if you can get a lot of noise and a lot of people looking at the page on Amazon in a shorter amount of time, like 2 weeks before the pub date and after, then that can also have an effect on how much visibility you get. So a lot of digital publishers also look about how you get visibility on Amazon, and all the kind of algorithm stuff without wanting to go into that. So you can be really quick. And with the second book, I've definitely seen our series working really well on Amazon. And actually, traditionally, they always have done, because readers, if you love something and you enjoy it, you want to come back and read more. So a series is a perfect way for a reader to get more of what they want. We try and get books, again, depending on the author, their commitments, their life, they probably have a day job. We try and look at 2 months in between each book in the series, if we can.
Yeah. So it's just, I guess the answer is lots of different ways, but that is the point, and that is the point. That's what's exciting about publishing now, that there are so many different options available to any aspiring author. We're getting lots of great other questions here, so I'm going to bring this one up because actually I was going to ask you this anyway, so it's great timing. From Julie, she says, "Hi Charlotte and Ori, what makes you fall in love with a submission?" That's a nice question. Well, I was going to ask a similar, like, what do you look for in a submission? So anything to do with submissions? Or
the fiction, so it's difficult because everyone says good writing and everyone has different ideas of what good writing is. But what I'm looking for in terms of the writing itself is a narrative voice that I find compelling and believable, and that is good at keeping the story going, and that I don't have to love the narrator. I actually quite like when I dislike someone and that's actually what propels me through a book. It can be quite fun because you're looking to see the narrator's demise or something like that. But writing that's compelling, a narrator or a narrative voice rather that's compelling and believable, and that makes me want to keep reading on. And in terms of concept, my big thing that I say to agents and people who have, whenever they ask me, is I want a story that is a conversation starter. Whether that's that you tell someone that you love it and oh my gosh, you have to read this book, but also for me more in terms of a book that has a concept that challenges people's ideas about what they think and what they think has always been right, or opinions they've always held, or things they've always thought they loved, something that really gets people thinking. And I think that I find so unique because that helps to, first of all, you build your NPR campaign if you've got a conversation starter for a book. Definitely. And also when you've got that really strong, memorable narrative voice, that's also going to be the thing that people keep talking about, like, oh my gosh, the narrator was so good, the way that so-and-so told this story. I think that's what makes me fall in love. And also having concepts that are original, or people who take two different kinds of common concepts and pull them together. So I mean, I wasn't an editor when it was submitted, but The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton is a great example of that. He's pulled sort of the Agatha Christie-esque whodunit and also this sort of mind-bending, genre-defying concept together and made such an incredible book. So things like that just make a book really unique. And then I couldn't stop talking to people about that. It wasn't necessarily that there was a grand emotional idea in the book that was amazing, but it was more that he pulled those two concepts together. And I was like, this is so weird. I never thought I was big into whodunits or things like that, but this book made me love a whodunit. So that original concept, that great narrative voice, and that idea of it being a sort of conversation stuff that really, really makes me love a submission.
I love that. It's great.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. What about
yes, I totally agree with Ori. I think it's really hard to say what it is that makes you keep reading. It's very hard to define, but basically it's something that keeps you turning the page, and that tends to be strong characters who you are intrigued by, and you know why they're acting the way they're acting. I guess in a way it'd be easier if I said what turns me off a book, and that's yeah, one of the big things for me is not understanding why characters act the way they do. And if I don't understand that, it's because there isn't that kind of conflict and motivation there in the writing yet. I feel like the writing will be telling the reader what they should think rather than showing them. So but it is really difficult. It's whatever is going to keep me turning the page, and that's a unique voice, or amazing strong characters, or a setting that is fresh and different that I've never read before, or it's a setting that is actually something I have read before, but it's done in a way completely different to anything else. Yeah.
So, but you're both looking for like so many different things. That's why there are constantly new books, and we constantly have space to find great new writers, don't we? Which is what It's exciting. So we've got a couple. Well, we could obviously be doing these questions forever, but I think probably we'll do a couple more, and then any questions that we didn't answer, we'll comment, afterwards, like in the next, like tomorrow, and make sure we get back to everyone. But we'll just go through 2 last questions, shall we? So I thought there was a good one to discuss now with everyone, from Helen, and she asked, what's the best or easiest way to get an agent? Which is a great question.
I think it's what Charlotte and I were saying before, which applies to the whole, and this is going to sound very generic, the whole thing about publishing as a whole. Do your research.
Yeah.
And I think the first thing when you're deciding whether you want an agent, I would say first make sure you've got a book to go with. Most agents will not sign you without a book unless they are approaching you themselves. And decide what kind of book it is that you want to write. And as Charlotte said, see where it sits in the market in terms of the book market. Which other book would you compare it to? See if you can find out. A thing that I like to do, especially when I'm trying to get proofs to authors for books, is you can go on to look inside on a Kindle on Amazon, and if you go to the relevance, you can see who they've listed there, and they'll usually say thank you to so and so.
That's such a good idea.
Agent.
Yeah.
And you can find out who their agents are.
One of my authors actually did that and ended up signing with the agent. So that is a really great, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, it's a really great way to find out who the agents of your books are, or alternatively, sometimes with a bit of patience, you can just Google the author and say author name. So for example, Zadie Smith, literary agent, and usually it will come up because the agency website will pop up. But so important to decide where you think your book sits in terms of other books. Which books do you think is similar to? Does the agent who, if you then Google agents, for example, you can go on Wikipedia and find a list of loads of UK agents, literary agencies, and you might go on there and see the bios of loads of different agents, decide who you think has a similar list in terms of what your book is, that has books on their list that's similar, and B, I also like to do a little stalk of people's Twitters to see if I think their personality will mesh with mine, because bearing in mind, you have to trust that person with the book that you've spent however many months or weeks or years writing, and you want to make sure that that person will understand you and understand your point of view, be able to empathize with it and do what's best for you. And obviously, usually that will come up having a meeting with an agent as well and seeing if you have a good vibe from them and that kind of thing. But the best way in terms of practicality is you go onto the website, you find the agent that you think you might like, or submit to multiple agents, I would say, rather than just one. Find a few agents you like, read more than once their submission guidelines, because sometimes they will discount submissions based on you doing your submission wrong. So because they get a lot of submissions, so make sure that you triple read and triple check their submissions guidelines and then submit to them however they want. Usually it's a couple of chapters plus a bio and like a paragraph of what your book is about, and then sometimes they'll also want a full synopsis with spoilers. So research is basically the main thing I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there is an easy way, I'm afraid. Maybe some agents will disagree, but I think it's worth bearing in mind that your submission will be one of thousands, which is a depressing thought, but also at the same time, I think that will, just remember that. So think, okay, have I got the pitch straight away, in that top, the first part of the email or the covering letter? Have I got a really clear pitch? Am I just keep thinking, am I making everything about my submission sound unique or different, or placing it in the market? So if you're writing crime and thriller, saying it's crime and thriller and it's going to be Patricia Cornwell or Bernard, whatever. And just again, the research part is so important. And also maybe I would also just have a look at the company as a whole as well, and literary assistants. One day, they're going to be building their own lists. A lot of the agents who've been working, the top agents have their lists are full and they won't be able to take on many authors at all. So look at who they're working with and who are their assistants, because they're going to build their own list at some point. So don't discount them. And I don't know what to suggest to make it easy, because I don't think it is. But hopefully, as for publishing, hopefully we will make it we'll have more open submissions and agents will hold more like Twitter pitches or something. Like there are so many amazing people in publishing working to make the submissions process easier and accessible. So
definitely. And that's I'm going to bring up a penultimate question, last one from the feed, and then I'm going to quickly ask you guys a finishing question. But this kind of touches on what you've both been talking about, from Eleanor, and she's interested to know if it's true that loads of people wrote and submitted books during lockdown, or have submissions stayed the same as usual. I guess she's wondering if she should wait a while to submit or not. And I guess I'm just wondering, have you both seen an increase in submissions over this time? I know that we've had lots of comments on the page about the One More Chapter submissions, and as you know, we've had that open for a really long time, but we have had it closed the past month or so because we have had quite a lot when we're trying to catch up, so we can then reopen it again. But anyway, not good now to ask you both of how have you been getting lots of submissions to yourself throughout this time?
Actually, I do feel like I've had a lot. I don't know about you, Ori.
I don't know that I've had loads that people have written during lockdown.
Oh, yeah, and that's a good point.
I've heard of one, but it wasn't submitted to me. I've heard of one that was written during lockdown. It was kind of a lockdown concept. I think.
I've had a lockdown concept.
Yeah.
One.
But I don't think I've had any that were written during lockdown. Not that I'm aware. I think if you feel your book is ready, you should submit it to a literary agent if you feel it's ready and you think you've done all you can do with it. And if you look at it again, your eyes might bore out of your head. But I think, which is also an important part, if you decide to, I think if you think it's ready, send it out. And often when you publish a book can be negotiated with your publisher. It's not always a hard and fast rule. Generally, most people the publishers will usually have the expertise as to when is the best time to publish. But I think
I feel like I've had a lot of submissions. I know I've had a lot of submissions. There's been loads of reading that I haven't, I've got a bit of a backlog, I'll be honest, because even though I thought I'd have loads of time for reading in lockdown, I haven't at all. But I don't necessarily think they are books that have been written in lockdown.
Yeah.
I don't think we've seen those yet. I've had one I know is a lockdown concept and was written in lockdown. And I do know some of my current authors have written books in lockdown, but I haven't necessarily seen, or it hasn't been stated in submissions, that book was written during that time.
Yeah.
Well,
so it's a hard one to answer.
Yeah, but probably, you'll be getting a lot more, and maybe there'll be who knows, in a few months' time there could be so many more books, or not. But I know people have also struggled with, creativity in this time. It's been a hard time to find that spark sometimes too. So guess we'll see. But as you were both saying, if you have a book that you think is ready, then just go out there with it. That's the exciting thing. So my quick last question to you both, I thought it would be a fun thing to finish on, for everyone out there listening, and that is, I could see you looked worried. Oh my god.
Okay, phew.
It's not a scary one. It's just a quick one to say, what are you guys looking for specifically as an editor? What are you looking for right now? I'm sure all the aspiring authors out there will be interested to know.
A really good story about friendship. I'd love a really good story about friendship.
What am I looking for? I can't think of anything that isn't generic, like a good book, a good story, or doing something a bit differently. I'd say about a year ago, I was looking for strong crime and thriller writers writing in a series, and we've since bought and published brilliant ones like Noelle Holton and Michael Wood, who are publishing, and M.A. Hunter. So now we have quite a few of those on the list. There isn't necessarily the space for more, although if there was one that absolutely was incredible, Yeah, that's not really answering. That's not really answering it. I don't know. It's so hard.
It's like, yeah, I guess
I mean, I guess I could say, you know, I'm looking for very commercial fiction, definitely, like real page turners, and not that other books aren't page turners.
no, I think but
I love historical, so I'm always happy to read historical.
But I think that's great what you said, or like, what do you mean by a story about like friendship? Just any kind of friendship or any.
Yeah, I guess.
Idea.
Even though I said I would never read it again, I loved A Little Life and the way that it depicted friendship, and sort of showed the ebbs and flows of how it went and the highs and the lows and everything like that. I think I really love that, and I think it was so beautifully written. It was written sort of almost like a fireside. You sit by the fireside and someone tells you a story kind of way, and I really enjoyed that. So I think something that deals with the complexities of friendship as well as the high points, almost the journey of a friendship, I suppose, is what I mean more specifically. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, there, you know, I'm sure everyone out there, you would love to know that. So now you know what we're looking for, and that's basically everything as well.
Yeah.
Well, Charlotte, you're looking for everything, and Ori's looking for a good story.
Maybe it's I don't know what I'm looking for until I read it.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess is that what must be so exciting as an editor for you both. You just get to when you discover a story, right, that just makes
definitely
light up, right? Cool. Well, that's kind of brought us to the end of our presentation. We'll be chatting for a good long while, but it's been so much fun, and
still feel there's so much to cover as well. But the feedback you can give us, please let us know if we can change the format, if there are other topics you want to hear about. Please let us know, because as we've all been saying, like, doing the research is the most important thing, and making sure, right, like, as writers you're as informed as you can be about publishing will then lead you to making the best decisions for your career as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we have more of these in the series coming up, and actually, say, put it in your diary right now. In 2 weeks' time, on the 26th, we'll be chatting with 3 incredible sales experts from within HarperCollins, and we'll be looking at and answering the question: how do we get your books on the shelves? How do we do it? So that's what we'll cover in 2 weeks' time. But yeah, as Charlotte said, just let us know if you have more questions on the editorial process specifically. But any and all questions.
And ask any comment below, and Ori and I can reply. Yeah,
absolutely. Cool. Well, amazing. I'm going to disappear. I'll disappear you both, and I'll quickly say thank you to everyone. But thank you so much to both of you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your questions as well and everything.
Yeah, thank you so much for watching.
So helpful. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Amazing. I just wanted to quickly end on the note to say thank you so much first to Charlotte and Ori for their incredible presentation and discussion. And I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for your fantastic questions. And as we touched on, if we didn't quite get to your questions, there was just so much to cover. We're going to go through and we'll comment our answers over the next day or so. And just to reiterate again, if anything else you want to learn about, to hear from us on, please just let us know, and we can just do these, all the time, basically, and just help you out. So yeah, I really, really hope that you found it useful. And again, as I said before, just to touch on it, we have another presentation in 2 weeks' time, definitely, and then we'll do more in the series after this based on your feedback. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I just hope that you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye for now.